This is the insane story of Louis Vuitton and how a tiny family business evolved into one of the most powerful brands in the world. Louis Vuitton is the most valuable luxury fashion brand in the world. Its CEO, Bernard Arnault, is also the second wealthiest man on the planet, with a net worth of around $180 billion. Louis Vuitton is a true rags-to-riches story, but the company would also be the subject of a hostile takeover, countless lawsuits, and a host of other controversies.
Louis Vuitton is the most valuable luxury brand, but it was started by a homeless teen. He had no education and slept in a forest.
This is the insane story of Louis Vuitton and how a tiny family business evolved into one of the most powerful brands in the world.
Louis Vuitton was born in 1821 and grew up working on his family farm in France, in a small village called Antoud, in the middle of nowhere. They had no electricity and no running water.
And then things got much worse. Louis' mother died when he was just 10 years old. His father quickly remarried, but Louis' new stepmother was incredibly controlling and manipulative toward him. He constantly got into fights with her.
And so, when he was just 13 years old, he ran away from home, with plans to go to Paris. He slipped out in the middle of the night without even saying goodbye.
There was just one problem. Paris was 225 miles away, and Louis had no money and no food, so he was forced to walk along dirt roads. Most nights, he slept in the woods with an empty stomach and just a cloak to keep him warm. Every time he ran into a new village, he would do odd jobs in exchange for food or coins. But there was never enough money left over for housing. Through these various odd jobs, Louis was able to pick up skills from craftsmen, learning how to work with metal, stone, fabric, and wood. This collection of skills would later transform his life. But at this rate, travel was incredibly slow. It took him 3 years to reach Paris.
Not long after he arrived in Paris, Louis was able to find work as an apprentice boxmaker and packer. Boxmakers would craft customs to Welsh clients them whenever a client was about to travel.
This job allowed him to meet many people from the upper class who were looking for custom-made luggage for their travels. Louis worked here for several years, learning the craft and working as hard as he possibly could. In 1851, the Empress of France ended up being a customer and took notice of his fine craftsmanship. She appointed him as her personal boxmaker and packer. For most boxmakers, this would be the highest honor anyone could ever achieve in their career. Louis had gone from being a homeless teenager with nothing to his name to now working a prestigious job among royalty. But Louis Vuitton had an even bigger vision for his future. After getting married at 33, Louis used his savings to start his own business, opening up his own box-making workshop in Paris. You see, Louis had noticed a major flaw in the luggage of the day. All the boxes were made of leather, with rounded dome-shaped tops so that rain would roll off. The problem? It was impossible to stack them. Packers had to carry them one by one. Louis began experimenting with different materials and found that canvas was lighter, more durable, and more water-resistant, which meant the trunks could have flat. It was now possible to stack multiple trunks at once. Louis's new design brought on the dawn of modern-day luggage. Once he launched his new line, it was immediately a massive success. He even created a Louis Vuitton catalog so that customers could browse products and have them made before delivery to their homes. Within 2 years, his suitcases were considered an elegant must-have accessory among the wealthy. Orders began arriving from around the world, even from royals as far away as Egypt. In 1859, Louis hired 20 employees and opened a new workshop outside Paris. And as more and more people began to travel by train and boat, traveling was no longer a hobby exclusive to the rich. It would seem as though Louis had made it. Unfortunately, that was not the case. France was heading to war, and tragedy was about to strike once again. In 1870, when Louis was 49 years old, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. Louis had to flee his home and live and he feared for his life. When Louis could finally return to his shop in 1871, everything was destroyed. Windows were smashed, equipment was stolen. He had lost everything he worked so hard for. But instead of giving up, he decided to use his remaining savings to rebuild, and vowed that it would be even better than before.
With so many people displaced from the war, there were far more empty shops available throughout the city. Louis took advantages, right next in the new lobby Rouse-Secret location.
Louis took advantage of this, opening his new shop in a much more wealthy, aristocratic location, right next to the railway station and the Grand Hotel. Travelers who needed new luggage didn't need to go far. By 1872, he launched a brand new design, luggage made of beige canvas with stripes. It became incredibly popular. Many other brands tried to copy his.
For the next 20 years, Louis continued to work from this new Paris shop until his death at the age of 70. But his legacy lived on through his son Georges, who took over the family business and set his sights on taking the brand global. Georges opened a popular store in London and pushed the brand into international markets. By 1900, the company had 100 employees, all trained for years before being trusted to make a product on their own. Even today, Louis Vuitton employees train for 18 months to 2 years before making a product solo. But Louis Vuitton luggage had become so popular that counterfeiters were now flooding the market with fake versions.
How much for this one? 200. It's a steal.
So in 1896, Georges introduced the now iconic LV monogram, his father's initials interlocked with geometric flowers and stars in a repeating pattern that was almost impossible to replicate convincingly. He also invented a revolutionary new trunk lock that was essentially impossible to pick.
In 1925, Coco Chanel commissioned a small dome-shaped handbag. Louis Vuitton also launched the Keepall, the Speedy, and the No, making handbags fashionable.
When Georges died in 1936, his son Gaston Louis took over, right as France was heading into the most devastating conflict of the 20th century. During World War II, contracts were canceled, and Gaston was forced to shut down the Louis Vuitton factory. Paris was under siege. An author named Stephanie Bonvicini discovered, through extensive archival research, that Louis Vuitton had collaborated with Nazi Germany, operating a glamorous boutique inside the Hotel du Parc throughout the occupation.
I need to see the company records from 1930 to 1945.
I'm sorry, but those records were destroyed in a fire. How convenient.
Clearly, the company was ashamed of this part of their history, but they would argue Gaston did what he needed to do to ensure the company's survival. Other fashion made similar choices. Without those decisions, their brands would likely no longer exist today. When Gaston passed away in 1970, his son-in-law Henri Racamier took over the brand. And unlike his predecessor's business experience, he was about to take it into a completely different level. Henry switched Louis Vuitton from wholesale to retail. By 1978, he had expanded to Japan and beyond. Sales went from $20 million to $26 million in 6 years. In 1984, Henry took the company public. All 1 million shares sold out immediately at $63.60 each. By 1987, Louis Vuitton hit $1 billion in annual sales, far beyond what young Louis could have ever imagined. Henry merged Louis Vuitton with Moet Hennessy to form LVMH. In theory, brilliant. In practice, it didn't get along with the Moet Hennestroid leadership, so he brought in Bernard Arnault. It was a catastrophic mistake. Bernard secretly bought 43% of LVMH shares and got support from the Moet and Hennessy families to seize control of the conglomerate. Henry felt completely betrayed and took Bernard to court.
The court finds in favor of Bernard.
This is right, he's right!
For the first time in nearly 100 years, no one from the Vuitton family was involved with the brand. After the hostile takeover, sales of Louis Vuitton began to crash. Journalists stopped covering the brand. For a while, it looked as though the company might fail entirely. Bernard knew how to turn things around. For Louis Vuitton's 100th anniversary, he launched collaborations with Vivienne Westwood and Isaac Bolzi monogram.
Vivienne Westwood and Isaac Mizrahi created bold new takes on the iconic LV monogram. People lined up to get their hands on a Louis Vuitton bag once again.
Bernard's investment paid off in a massive way. He is now the CEO of LVMH, the richest man in the world in 2021, with a net worth exceeding $180 billion. He is known as the Wolf in Cashmere today, all tracing back to a broke, homeless teenager walking into Paris with nothing. In the modern world, Louis Vuitton continued to expand with new, colorful styles that resonated with a younger audience. In 1997, Marc Jacobs became creative director. He designed the first ready-to-wear line, created the popular monogram Vernis handbags, and expanded the brand into watches, jewelry, and sunglasses. Of course, Louis Vuitton has an entire legal team monitoring for copyright infringement. They don't hesitate to sue. They even sued Google over search results leading people to fake bags. Google won that case, arguing they can't control what their users post. Louis Vuitton also collaborated with Supreme, the streetwear brand they had previously sued for how profitable the collaboration could be. The LV Supreme leather trunk went on sale for $125,000. The hoodie sold for over $5,000. The counterfeit problem that has plagued Louis Vuitton since the very beginning is still massive. They estimate they lose hundreds of 168 years in business. They don't seem to be slowing down. Louis Vuitton continues to be a brand that people around the world aspire to own. It is currently the #1 fashion brand in the world, valued at $39 billion, with more than 400 stores in nearly every major city on Earth.